Hungary has launched a blistering attack on Europe's handling of Ukraine, and the language is explosive. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjarto has accused Western leaders of acting like nannies to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky during his high-stakes engagements with the United States. The remark, delivered in a televised interview, has ignited fresh controversy inside an already divided Europe. Speaking to Georgia's Rustavi 2 channel, Szijjarto claimed European leaders rallied around Zelensky not out of solidarity, but to shield him from pressure by U.S. President Donald Trump to strike a peace deal with Russia. Szijjarto said that European leaders escorted Zelensky like nannies, calling it humiliating for the Ukrainian president as a sovereign leader. He criticized the optics of arriving at critical talks flanked by a convoy of other heads of government. According to Szijjarto, the image projected weakness. Multiple media outlets previously reported that UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron had coached Zelensky on how to repair relations with Trump following a heated White House confrontation earlier this year. That explosive February meeting reportedly strained ties between Washington and Kyiv at a delicate moment in the war. By August, Zelensky returned to the United States, this time accompanied by the leaders of the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland. To Budapest, that show of unity looked less like support and more like supervision. Szijjarto went further, arguing that Ukraine's European backers had previously persuaded Zelensky to abandon early peace negotiations with Moscow nearly 4 years ago. If a deal is struck now, he warned, it would likely be worse for Ukraine and worse for Europe than what might have been secured in April 2022. The accusation strikes at the heart of Europe's Ukraine strategy. Last year, European Union officials sharply criticized President Trump's proposed peace framework, which reportedly called for Ukraine to withdraw forces from the Donbass and accept territorial concessions to Russia. Brussels dismissed the plan, insisting that Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity must remain non-negotiable. Moscow, meanwhile, has repeatedly accused the EU and the United Kingdom of sabotaging U.S. peace efforts and deliberately prolonging the conflict. Russian officials argue that Western military and political backing has hardened Kyiv's stance, reducing the likelihood of compromise. Hungarian FM's remarks came after PM Orban accused Ukraine of undermining national interests by urging Budapest to abandon cheap Russian energy. Orban warned Ukrainians to cease Brussels' demands, isolating Hungary from Russian supplies, declaring such pressure renders Ukraine an enemy.
My question would be this: does the Prime Minister consider this specific type of decision to be sufficient, or is there perhaps any other form of support or assistance available for the Hungarians residing in Transcarpathia? And could this decision potentially influence a possible visit by President Zelensky to Hungary?
That's what he means?
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely. Peace negotiations are crapping out. Excuse me, the St. Got hardware are famously well behaved. I thought he wouldn't say it as bluntly as I do, but the real issue is that it's not those enforcing conscription who should be banned, but the Ukrainian president. This is a legitimate, sensible point.
Yes, now let's talk a little about this and its context as well. First, let's send our greetings to the Hungarians in Transcarpathia who are in a very difficult situation. Let them know we are with them. We don't make a big public announcement because they are already harassed quite enough there, but every single Hungarian soldier who has died on the Ukrainian front can count on the Hungarian state's support with more than just words. We seek out their families, and wherever we are able, we help everyone. We just don't make it public. but they are the metaphor, they are the dramatic deaths, because there are those who die on the front in battle, but there's violence from forced conscription or enlistment that completely disregards health conditions. These people don't die on the front, but even before that, one is beaten to death, like the first victim, and the other was taken by we know what we're talking about. And this cannot be endured in silence. Peter Szijjarto has a mandate to keep this issue on the agenda in Brussels. We are handling this here at home. We are noting everything. We know about everything. We are recording everything, and everything will have its consequences in due time, because everything has its appointed time. It was a long time ago when we looked like fools and let them push us around. That's over now, and everyone had better take note of it, our neighbors too, especially those towards Ukraine. Now, we are definitely in a different world since 2010. However, what you mentioned in your introductory remarks regarding how and in what way we should shape our relations with the Ukrainians, beyond the issue of forced conscription, that is a truly significant question. My position now is that Ukrainians should not be allowed into the European Union, and I tell Hungarians that we should not want to be part of any military or economic alliance with them, because that will lead to trouble. Two kinds of trouble will arise. The first, the most important thing, is that they are pulling us into this war. And this holds true even if a peace treaty were to be signed. Because who can truly guarantee that along that 1,200-kilometer long front line, if there is peace right now, in just 1 or 2 years from now, there won't be war again exactly the same way? No one can guarantee that. And if they are members, they will drag us into the war. That's what Mr. Weber is talking about. And it's unthinkable that a European Union member state is attacked or gets into a military conflict, and the others just watch. Now, everyone is going, money is going, soldiers are going, weapons are going. Therefore, Ukrainians should not be allowed into the European Union in the foreseeable future, because they pose a continuous threat of war to us, given that a Russian-Ukrainian conflict could erupt again at any time, and we would also be drawn into this conflict. We have nothing to do with them. That's the first point. The second is, if we allow the Ukrainians in, our farmers, our local producers are already struggling, because their products coming from there, produced under much looser regulations, which are of worse quality but cheaper, are already posing a serious challenge to Hungarian agriculture. So, some form of cooperation needs to be established with the Ukrainians, which benefits both them and us. Not one that only serves their interest and destroys us, no, but one that both sides, that's what I call a strategic partnership. We'll reach an agreement, but not on membership. That's a completely different story. But on how we'll trade and how investments will be made. Calmly, one by one, without creating any kind of obligation that would drag us along with them. And to a war against Russia, we must not allow this. Therefore, we must cooperate with the Ukrainians, but there can be no talk of their membership. This is the first point. The second point is that the Ukrainians must understand that they need to abandon their constant demands in Kyiv, or rather in Brussels, where they are constantly trying to ensure that Hungary is cut off, separated from cheap Russian energy. As long as Ukraine does this, then Ukraine, I must apologize for saying this, is our enemy. Ukraine violates our fundamental interests by constantly demanding and inciting Brussels to disconnect Hungary from cheap Russian energy. Anyone who does this is not an opponent of Hungary, but its enemy. I will tell you the numbers. If there is no Russian oil and no Russian gas, then you, and indeed all of us, will have to pay the following prices. Today, an average utility bill for 1 year, I'm stating the average here, is 250,000 forints. But the Poles and Czechs have 800,000, even 1 million for serious matters. Your question, after all, is about how stable, organized and secure Ukraine, the Ukrainian state, and the future of its army are. So should we be concerned that a situation might arise where things in Ukraine get completely out of hand and escape all control, and that from now on Ukraine will pose a threat to Hungary with that massive army it can build up with European funds, right? And they also make threats, because sometimes a commander there lets it slip that they'll be in Budapest in I don't know how many hours, if it comes to that. You know, these are the kinds of things said by, incidentally, our Ukrainian friends who are asking for our vote. So the answer is that Ukraine's future is not yet decided. Yeah, either Ukraine will be completely occupied by the Russians, or ultimately, what I wouldn't bet on, but the European Union is playing for this outcome, that Ukraine and the Union together will defeat the Russians on the front line and push them back, perhaps even all the way to Moscow. Or a controlled land area will be established, another Afghanistan, or something quite similar. Regarding this, no one can say anything for sure at this very moment. I can only tell you this much. We run the smallest risk if we stay out of every conflict in Ukraine's territory. And meanwhile, the EOP, we take care of our own strengthening, say, financially. That's no accident. I don't want to talk about this at length. It's no accident that Hungary has never had such large foreign exchange and gold reserves as it does today.
This has a reason.
And never before has Hungary spent this much money to acquire modern weapons and to build up the capabilities of its armed forces so that we can stop anyone who would turn against Hungary.